Today we have a very special guest joining us. He's a dedicated wildlife enthusiast and a key figure in a remarkable organization that has been making a significant impact on the lives of a unique primate species in South Africa. Monkey Helpline is a non-profit organization dedicated to the protection, rescue and welfare of the vervet monkey population in South Africa. Their team of passionate volunteers work tirelessly to ensure the well-being of these incredible primates, often found in urban and suburban areas. Vervet monkeys are fascinating creatures, but they also face numerous challenges in their coexistence with humans. Let's delve right in and welcome Steve. Please introduce yourself and just give our listeners a bit of context as to what you do and where you're from.
Well, I'm from the Monkey Helpline. It's a monkey rescue and rehabilitation sanctuary organization, doing a lot of education about monkeys and other primates in South Africa, and very busy trying to ensure that people understand why the monkeys are here and how it comes that people have so much interaction with them on a daily basis in the areas where you find these monkeys. We're talking about vervet monkeys, of course.
Yes, absolutely. So
exclusively we deal with vervet monkeys, obviously, because they are the current
and their conservation
issue as far as human-monkey interactions are concerned. But when we do our educational talks, we talk about the other primates that we have in South Africa, the baboons, and then what we call the bush babies. And then there is another monkey, the Samango monkey, which lives more in the coastal forests and in gorges, not so much around Durban, but further north and south. And some also in the Pietermaritzburg area, Karkloof.
Oh, wow. So let's focus on the vervet monkeys. Give us an indication of their population distribution throughout South Africa. So where would we mostly find them? Is it a KZN?
Well, KZN is probably the most densely populated area for monkeys, but the Eastern Cape and then down into the Western Cape as well there are, especially along the coastal areas and up the east coast of South Africa, slightly inland. But you also find them in areas like Pretoria, Johannesburg, amongst the koppies, rhynkies as they call them. And people often phone us from those areas and say, oh, there's a monkey here. We've never seen a monkey here before. What's happened? And those could be pets that have escaped, or they could be dispersing male monkeys who will often travel huge distances from the time they leave a troop that they're part of till they find another troop, and often moving through areas where there are no monkeys. And so someone wakes up in the morning and sees a monkey sitting on their roof or in their garden, and they panic and think, what's happening here? But it's just a dispersing monkey.
Oh. So tell us more about them. So, obviously, how have things changed over time? We're seeing them more and more in our gardens. Is it a population change? Is it just the fact that they're becoming more familiar with us? Tell us more in terms of
the reason why you have so much interaction with them in developed areas and urban areas is that we have moved into their territory. So as much as people don't like to hear it, they were here before us. And we know that because every troop of monkeys consists obviously of adult females and then a range of youngsters down through to the smallest ones that could be a few weeks old, a few days or a few months depending on the time of year. And the male monkeys who are born into a troop in a territory. So you have a troop of monkeys living in a territory. Female monkeys never ever leave the territory that they're born in. They never leave the troop that they're born in. So those monkeys are living in their ancestral home. And this goes back hundreds and hundreds of monkey generations probably. And humans have arrived here over the centuries, and we've developed areas into our residential areas and our business areas, our farms, schools, parks, etc. It actually happens to be the territory of a particular troop of monkeys. So initially, when we first started using those territories, the monkeys would avoid us because they weren't familiar with us, they didn't quite know. But they're very opportunistic, highly intelligent, foraging animals. So they'll forage throughout their territory, and those parts of their territory that they have sort of avoided because of development, as they've got more familiar with the presence of humans, so they've moved closer, until eventually some monkeys live in territories that are entirely built up as residential areas or industrial areas or farmland. And they've adapted to living there, and they will never leave. If you had to put a tarmac across an entire territory of a troop of monkeys, they would forage and find food where they could within that territory around human activity. If there was no food to be found, the monkeys will die off, and eventually the troop won't live there anymore. They won't be alive anymore. So they're actually just around us because they are able to find sufficient food and cover.
So what would they naturally forage on?
They naturally forage on a high percentage of their diet is found in grassland, seeds and herbs and little shrubs and things like that. They eat grasses, they eat grass shoots, they eat grass seeds, but they also obviously feed in trees where they eat the fruits, indigenous fruits in the trees. They will eat bark off certain trees, growing shoots on the ends of branches, the pods on acacias and other trees that produce pods. They will even eat lichen and moss and stuff like that. And then in between all that, they'll eat the odd little animal, some types of insects, maybe the odd little bird nestling that they find, some eggs that they find in a bird nest. But it's not a big part of their diet. It's almost an opportunistic kind of thing that happens as they're foraging around for their vegetable meals that they eat.
And in terms of the population, I mean, historically, were they predators that would manage their population? Has the population sort of got out of control, or is that a perceived?
That's a very interesting question, because it's one of the most important things we have to deal with. And that is people saying we are having an overpopulation of monkeys because their natural predators have been removed. So who would their natural predators have been? Crowned eagles, leopards, caracal, big snakes for small monkeys, possibly one or two other opportunistic animals would take them. But the number of predators for monkeys is very little in context of the large number of species you find around. And also they couldn't really have had much of an impact on the troops of monkeys, because the troops of monkeys were pretty stable until humans came along. So they would also have a variety of animals that they preyed on. There's no animal that specifically only eats monkeys. Even crowned eagles, who we consider a monkey catching specialist bird, eats more dussies and more people's cats and little dogs and guinea fowl and Egyptian geese and domestic chickens by far than they eat monkeys. In fact, they don't eat that many monkeys at all. Monkeys are way too alert to their presence and the risk that they hold for them, so they're always on the lookout for them. But what's happened is that we see monkeys more frequently because they are more closely, their activities are more closely interwoven with ours where we live, because we have taken over their territory, and they simply are recolonizing areas that they were almost driven out of, but never leaving their main territory. And as they've got used to that, they come back in again. And people see baby monkeys at the time of year, sort of from end of September through to mid-December mostly from mid-October to the beginning of December, where babies are born. And they panic and they say, oh, look at all these monkeys, they just breed and breed and breed. And the fact is that the natural predators have been substituted by the dangers that we have introduced into the areas where the monkeys live. So monkeys are being run over every day by non-selective predators. They are killed by cars, electrocuted on power lines, killed by dogs, shot with people with pellet guns and a variety of other weapons, bows and arrows, crossbows, paintball guns, catapults, even firearms in residential areas. They are caught in snares and gin traps by people who eat them and use them for muti and bushmeat. So the number of predators has increased drastically. Also, we believe that the fights between monkeys are far more violent, especially when it comes to males, because of the pressure that they're under, the stress that they're under, because of what humans are doing to them. So we have introduced these non-selective predators that are far more lethal than natural predators ever could be. And if you think that a female monkey can only have her first baby in her 5th year, so she has to be born, live for 4 years, and usually their birthday is towards the end of the year. And when she turns 4, the following April through to the beginning of June, end of April to beginning of June, is the time they come into estrus, and she may fall pregnant and have a baby 5.5 months later, more or less at the time, within a month or two, of when she was born, which means she's 5 years old before she has her first baby. A female cat born on the same day as a female monkey, by the time that female monkey has had her first baby, that female cat will already have resulted in the birth of many thousands of cats, if the process of breeding, having kittens, and them having their kittens, and the exponential growth from one cat. An American society has estimated that one pair of cats, they talk about a pair of cats, but just taking a male and a female, and in 7 years can result in over 17,000 cats being born. So monkeys having one baby in a year only from the time she's 5. She might have, in her lifetime, she might only have between sort of maybe 7 and 10 babies in her entire lifetime, of which probably 1 might reach adulthood when it can also breed. Also keeping in mind that every male monkey that's born in a troop that survives to 5 years old will leave that troop when he's 5 years old and disperse to join another troop somewhere else.
Okay.
So
I'm glad we discussed it. So what are the other health issues faced by them, just sort of in terms of, we had a discussion before we started this podcast about rabies and the perception that they are rabies carriers. Can we unpack that a little bit?
Well, for some reason, the whole concept of rabies has become very entrenched in people's minds when it comes to monkeys. So we'll often get phone calls from people saying, oh, you know, there's a monkey sitting on our wall and he's frothing from his mouth, or there's like 5 monkeys in this troop and they're all frothing from their mouth, or they whatever. Not realizing that there are many foods that monkeys eat that can cause a frothiness as they eat them. Or the monkey could just be a sick monkey that's having breathing problems, and because of that, you have a buildup of saliva around the monkey's mouth. The fact is that there has never, ever to date been a recorded instance of a monkey in South Africa contracting rabies. And no one has ever been bitten by a monkey and ended up getting rabies. Also, the number of people being bitten by monkeys is so slow relative to other injuries that they sustain during their lifestyle, that, or so low, should I say, that the chances of being bitten by a monkey, unless you actually do something to aggravate that situation, is virtually zero. So rabies is not an issue, and we have monkeys tested for rabies every once in a while. In fact, a couple of years back, we had a monkey in Assegai, about 2-3 years ago, that was attacked by dogs, and the dogs killed the monkey. But it put up such a strong fight that the owner, when he told this to the vet said, oh, well, maybe this monkey's got rabies. We need to take it and send the brain off for rabies. And we got home from a rescue at about 9 o'clock that night, Carol and I, and Carol looked on her phone, and there was a WhatsApp message saying that for the first time, there was an instance of a monkey being recorded with rabies in South Africa. And we said, no ways. We phoned around, we phoned the veterinary rabies group via Kerry, and they said, no, this can't be, and they check out. Anyway, it turns out that on the same day, a dog had been brought in for euthanasia that had bitten a child and some other people. The dog was euthanized and the relevant parts sent off for rabies testing, and the new system introduced at the laboratory had confused the person putting that information in. Oh, wow. And they swapped the 2 results around, and they sent out the results saying, no, the dog is fine, but the monkey had rabies. So the people who had been bitten were notified, you don't have to worry, the dog didn't have rabies. And only when we queried it, I think Lucille, I can't remember what her name is, the same lady that headed up the whole COVID project, she contacted the laboratory and she said, look, just do your check. Go over everything and make sure that you're correct on this, because it doesn't sound right. And of course, they came back and said, hey, we've made a big mistake here. So they had to immediately send a notice out to every destination in the country that they'd notified, including every vet, to reassure them about this. And then we had an incident not long after that where the Veterinary Council sent out a poster trying to encourage people to have their animals vaccinated. And they spoke about rabies, and they put a series of photographs and they used a Vervet monkey as one of their photographs. So we contacted them straight away, said, no, you can't do this. You're telling people that monkeys carry rabies. They don't. There's never been a case. We can't exactly say why, but maybe they're so attentive to body language that they notice an animal that maybe they've got some kind of a resistance to it. Just like some animals have resistance to venoms that snakes might introduce to them when they bite them. So anyway, the Veterinary Council sent out a notice as well and said, hey, take that down.
Okay, so a lot of misinformation out there.
Very much information, yeah. Also about monkeys attacking people, attacking dogs and all that, but we can get to that.
And now, a word from our amazing sponsors who make the Pause and Effect podcast possible. To make a promise implies trust. To make a pledge creates expectation. And to make a commitment initiates responsibility. For more than 25 years, we have made it our mission to take the ifs, buts, and maybes out of premium pet food. That's why our experts put the best science behind our food, so your pet's health is put first. That's why when you seek value, we strive to give you more, like protecting your pets with our free accident benefits. And when you need great tasting food, our fresh meat taste delivers. You see, what sets us apart is not one thing, it's all these things combined. because we understand that when it comes to your pet's health, you don't want doubt and uncertainty. You want absolutes, the absolute best given your means, like premium veterinary quality food of real value that doesn't cost an arm and a paw. So rest assured that any claim we make, we stand by. It's our commitment to your pets and our promise to you. In fact, we're so confident in what we stand for that we have made the ultimate promise to you. It's called the Ultra Pet Promise, 100% money-back guarantee, a no ifs, no buts, and no maybes kind of promise. We call it our satisfaction guarantee. Welcome back to Just for Pets. You're with Dr. Cara.
Hi, Doc. It's Justin the Jack Rossi here, and boy am I itchy.
Are you on a hypoallergenic diet?
Hyper what now?
Changing to a special diet will really help. And Just for Pets have a massive range. And flea and tick medication, special shampoo.
Ooh, how quick can I get some?
Order today and we'll deliver pronto.
I feel better already.
Justforpets.co.za. Vet approved, pet adored. Gets it all to your door.
Let's get back to our conversation on the Paws and Effect podcast. One of the things that we hear a lot about is this contentious issue of feeding monkeys, of having feeding stations and people choosing to support them and try and supplement their diets. Is this something that you would encourage or discourage?
I think it's a very controversial subject. In fact, don't think it really is. Because you've got people who have got a natural conservation mindset where we've been indoctrinated since we were little, and it's a good thing, not to feed wild animals in zoos and in game reserves and declared nature areas and things like that, which is correct. There's enough food for them there. You don't need to, although there's occasional disaster times, like when there's droughts and they've got to put in bales of lucerne for hippos and other animals in conservation areas. But it's done under very strict protocols. But when it comes to feeding monkeys, there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. Firstly, you don't do it in an area where the presence of those monkeys is going to cause a problem to neighbors because they're jumping on cars or spending more time jumping onto people's barge boards and gutters and things like that because they hang around there if they get constantly fed at exactly the same time or every time they arrive. And they might start arriving at a destination, find that there's no food available and hang around there waiting for it because they know that as soon as the people see them, they'll come out and feed them. And then also to go out and to feed monkeys by hand and to feed them the wrong kinds of food. We talk about the sort of foods that are wrong. In fact, the foods that are wrong for us, like white bread and all refined foods, we shouldn't feed to monkeys because they're going to end up having the same consequences as we do with a diet of food that's unhealthy. So find out what the correct foods are and feed them if you want to. Find out from an organization like Monkey Helpline what is the best way to do it to ensure that if you're going to put out the food and the monkeys get it, they find it more in the context of like they're foraging through your garden, they're opportunistic feeders, they
more
find
like
something
enrichment.
there.
So
yeah, and they'll
placing them strategically rather than having like a feeding station and sort of the behavioral expectation to have it there and every day and visit at the same time of the day. So
well, it's the bird table mentality that humans have. Instead of spreading their bird seed out on their lawn or in their garden on the ground, they want to put it on. They want to see it.
They
want
yes.
to
interact.
And the crazy thing about it is that when you've got a bird table full of bird seed and it rains, it all gets wet and it goes sour. Whereas if it's spread out in your garden, once the rain is gone and the sun dries it, the birds can still eat those same seeds that you threw out there. So the idea is if you're going to feed monkeys, find out what to feed them. What is the best healthy food? Doesn't mean you can't feed them foods that humans eat. You can give them the whole range of vegetables that we eat, but not stuff that will go sour or soggy and make a mess and attract flies and things like that. And then put it out in your garden so the monkeys almost find it as if they're foraging through your garden. So spread it out. Where we feed monkeys at our house, we spread out the food. We put it out for them over a distance of about 25, 30 meters. So the whole troop, because monkeys don't feed in a little group. So you also have skirmishes between monkeys if you put all the food in one spot. And of course, with monkeys shouting and monkeys screaming and monkeys squealing and monkeys getting bitten, it also upsets people and it sort of makes them a little bit nervous. So do it the right way if you're going to do it, or don't do it at all. Plant good plants in your garden that the monkeys can eat, And know that if you attract monkeys to your garden with natural vegetation, you're going to get monkeys there. So don't say, well, they come into my garden and eat my petunias and gazanias and pick all the berries off our ornamental trees and whatever, and then plant natural food for them. They're going to come there anyway. So accept that they're there. And if they come along and you don't want them there and you want to move them along, then there are very gentle ways of doing that. Just take your hose pipe out and squirt it at them. With a jet of water, not a spray. On a hot day, they'll come and sit in the spray and enjoy it.
They'll enjoy the cooling.
There's a lot of information about monkeys that people can get. They can go to our website, they can go on the internet and find out about it. And honestly, if you're going to live in the proximity of animals like that, then you have an obligation to find out a bit about them. It's their home as much as it is yours.
No, I agree very much. And your website is?
It's www.monkeyhelpline.co.za. And then just go to the menu and click on that and choose whatever you want to read. But all the information you need is there.
Oh, that's great. That's a very good resource. So let's go into the topic of interaction of monkeys with our domestic pets. We had a chat earlier and said that one of the things that you're often contacted about is dogs interacting with monkeys, and often it being quite a traumatic event, both for monkeys and the pets. How can owners avoid this? What is the best way of managing these very common incidences?
Yeah. Well, there are 3 areas of pets really where monkeys and dogs, cats, and birds in cages are the subject of concern by people. Keeping in mind, no monkey comes to your house to attack your dog. A monkey wouldn't attack a predator that he or she knows will probably severely injure them or kill them. The monkey's coming to your garden because it's part of its foraging route that it takes to move through its ancestral home every day. The dog is the one that needs to be properly controlled. People shouldn't have dogs that they can't control. The fact is that dogs will go out and dogs will bark, they'll attack monkeys if they can, and that creates an interaction where the monkey can bite and severely injure that dog. The fact is most monkeys end up dying when they've been bitten by dogs. They might survive for a few days. They often leave the site of the interaction, and that dog owner phones and says, oh, the monkeys were here and they bit my dog, but the monkeys are fine. I couldn't see any blood or any injuries. But dogs have massively powerful jaws, as you know. And a bite from a dog, any dog, a Dachshund, Jack Russell, Maltese on a smaller monkey, and even on the bigger monkeys, if it comes to Jack Russells and Dachshunds and the many Africanus dogs that everybody who's got a mongrel nowadays calls it an Africanus, but they cause massive crushing injuries. And if you do a post-mortem on that monkey after it's died, it looks like someone's actually put a bay mixer inside there and zhuzhed up that muscle. So the monkey can run away, they're very tough, but they die after a few days of quite incredible suffering, mostly. I think that maybe 5% of dogs actually that physically get into interaction with a monkey survive. That's a lot.
Do they leave the troop or do they stay?
No, they'll stay with the troop as long as they can keep up with the troop. But, as they get weaker and so they get left behind and they'll sit, and we'll often get called out to a monkey that's been noticed because he's just sitting there looking very sick. They're not that easily noticed by members of the pack because they very rarely have open injuries on them. Usually by the time they have open injuries, they're dying already. 2 dogs grabbing one monkey and pulling and wrestling and that, or a big dog like a husky or a Weimaraner or a pit bull or German shepherd will, if the monkey is big and strong and fights back, inflict quite severe injuries on it. But if it's a small monkey, it just gets bitten, crushed, and that's it. They're dead. They don't even, and their skin is quite tough. So, and dogs' teeth are actually very blunt by comparison to monkeys' teeth. So if a monkey bit a dog in the same way the dogs bite, that dog would look as if someone had taken a machete to it. That's what happens to monkeys when they fight with one another. So the idea is to understand why the monkeys are there. They don't come there and they don't tease your dogs. Actually, a very interesting thing about monkeys is that they'll sit on a wall or tree and they'll bob their heads and they'll come down lower to attract the dog's attention. And we have looked at this and we thought about it, and we think that what they're doing is that they are focusing the dog's attention there on them while other monkeys move through their territory without being attacked. especially if it's older monkeys. I don't think they sort of think, oh, there's an old lady or an old guy there or whatever. They just know that the monkeys are at risk from the dogs. So if you can focus the dog's attention, and I use that in the singular and the plural of dogs, if you focus the dog's attention where the monkeys are that are safe, then the others have a chance to move through. One of the problems is where monkeys do get caught out is sometimes the branches break that they're sitting on. The end branch suddenly snaps and the monkey falls down where the dogs are or dog is. They run along walls to get across from one garden to another, thinking they're safe on the wall. And then one will, say, be running along, and a dog will jump up against the wall to panic the monkey, and the monkey will fall off the wall. If it's lucky, it'll fall off to the side away from the dog, but sometimes there's a dog on both sides. But what happens, sometimes they turn around and they try and run back, and they try and jump over each other, and then one of them, especially if it's a smaller one, gets knocked off the wall. Other times, the dogs just catch the monkey. And in that particular situation, often another monkey will come to the assistance of that monkey and try and attack the dog and track. And so then that monkey gets attacked. This one gets away if it can. Sometimes we end up with 2, 3 dead monkeys from one interaction. So the monkeys are not teasing the dogs, and the monkeys are not coming there to fight with the dogs. Monkeys only fight with dogs. You know that if a monkey bites your dog, the monkey was fighting for its life. And that's really what it boils down to. You can take your dog to the vet, and if you're lucky, it'll only cost you 5,000 or 10,000 rand. It could cost you 25,000, 30,000 rand to get that dog fixed up, and maybe more, and the dog even die after that. But the fact is that dogs don't often die from being bitten by monkeys. If they get a major blood vessel severed or into the lung, a monkey's tooth could go through the chest into the chest cavity. The risk is higher of it dying. But most dogs are able to go to the vet and get fixed up. Monkeys don't have that luxury. Even though we take them, if we get called out to them, they more frequently than not, they end up dying.
And sometimes it's difficult to actually assist them because you need to catch them first.
You've got to catch them. And also, when they're in the condition that they're in, you've got to sedate them. And often that, as you know, as a vet, that can often be the cause of death because their system is so compromised.
Mm-hmm. And they're very stressed.
Yeah.
They're not used to being handled.
And the other thing about birds, I think, is something you probably don't see that often as a vet, but we get a lot of phone calls from people saying that the monkeys were attacking our birds. They knocked our bird cage off the table or whatever. Actually, what they're doing is they're trying to get at the bird seed that's inside the bird cage. And the bird will start fluttering around as a cockatiel or a parrot or a budgie or whatever else it is. And sometimes that confuses the monkey. Or the monkey, the wing comes through the bars and the monkey grabs it and pulls out the feathers or whatever. But you don't find the monkey attempting to eat that bird. It's mostly because of the seed. And people shouldn't leave birds out when they're not there. I've seen parrots, African greys, I've seen an Amazon, I've seen conures and cockatiels and budgies and canaries badly mutilated in their cage by goshawks. An African goshawk or a black sparrowhawks usually go for prey that are flying, but they will go for a bird in a cage because they're not aware that it's not going to fly. If they survive the impact of the bars of the cage, they will catch that bird and get their foot right through those bars and grab that bird, which will also flutter and end up right against them. So when you see your bird in the cage with its feathers plucked or half its head eaten away, which is unfortunately the reality of what we do see, we have also seen the goshawks doing it. People have videoed it from the neighbor's yard. And I personally have seen it in my own garden, where I rescued two budgies that were in a cage under a carport. And I got home and the one was dead. And I went inside to go and call my wife and say, hey, come and have a look at this here. And got out and the other one was also dead. The bird was sitting on the cage when we came out. And sadly, it was a young African goshawk that wasn't very successful at hunting. And I had a big aviary with parrots and a few rescued birds in. And over the next few days, I saw him trying desperately to get at the birds inside the aviary. And sadly, the one morning I got there and he was dead, lying next to the aviary. And I phoned Ben Hoffman, the guy who's our go-to for raptors, birds of prey. And he said, Steve, often young raptors, birds of prey, don't survive because they don't have good hunting skills. They're not born as natural hunters. And a lot of raptors die because they can't find enough food. And he said it's very common to actually have this happen that we've experienced. So your birds are at risk of your neighbor's cats. They're at risk of birds of prey like goshawks and sparrowhawks. So don't blame the monkeys.
Don't blame the monkeys. Yeah. And cats and monkeys, we don't often see them interacting.
Very, very rarely have we had engagements with cats where the cat has been injured because of the engagement with the monkey. Maybe, I must be very honest with you, maybe 2 or 3 times in the 30 years that I've been dealing with monkeys, that I'm pretty sure that the injury was inflicted by a monkey on the cat. But other times, cats have been attacked by other cats. And even at night, people on the bluff complained that the monkeys attacked their cat on the roof of their house at like 11 o'clock at night. And quite clearly, it was a fight between 2 cats that caused the injuries to the cat. But of course, monkeys are visible, and South Africans particularly, who are often frustrated because of the economic situation in South Africa, because of the corruption that's destroying this country, because of driving on a road and hitting 10 potholes every time you drive to your kid's school, or having blackouts because of corruption in the whole electricity supply and lack of maintenance. Those kind of frustrations are welling up in people, and they boil over, and the most visible target are monkeys. Of course, monkeys remind us of humans in so much of what they do. We have a history of comparing monkeys and people that is very negative, so a lot of people have got a negative attitude to monkeys. So everything monkeys do is wrong. They won't sit back and actually say, hey, you know what, they're actually sentient beings that have got their own reasons for being there, their own reasons for doing the things they do. And actually, we're in their space. The least we can do is try and respect them and have a sort of a coexistence that is beneficial to both lots. So monkeys are blamed for everything that you are frustrated about, that you can't do anything about. You can't very well go and drag your counsellor by the throat and say, you see this,
sort it out.
Fix it up, sort it out. You can't do anything about the corruption in government, where you see people getting wealthier by the day while the majority of people are actually getting poorer. So you take it out on the monkeys. Your pawpaw in your tree, that's my pawpaw. The fact that you're never going to reach that pawpaw up in the top of the pawpaw tree, the fact that the bulbuls and the mousebirds and the weavers are going to eat that pawpaw before you get to it, but,
you don't want the monkey
monkeys.
to get it.
Don't want the monkeys to get it.
Resource protected.
I asked the guy that, I said, well, you can't get to those pawpaws, so why are you moaning? Yeah, but I leave them for my birds. My birds. No, they're not yours. They're just wild birds, also in their home where they live, that you live in as well. So, yeah, that's really, it's an understanding of who they are and why they're here and why they do the things they do, what their behavior means. And at least having the decency to get to know a little bit about them. And so you'll find that your animals aren't at risk if you look after them.
And that's all education.
Well,
start when they're in schools and educate your children as to the realities of the situation, including...
Yeah, we go and do a lot of talks at schools.
Do you?
Yeah, it's a very important part of what we do. In fact, Monkey Helpline started to provide people with education about monkeys, because I was involved with the Wildlife Society and with what was known as the Natal Parks Board in those days, with the Durban SPCA and Beauty Without Cruelty, and in all those capacities, there were always things coming in about monkeys. So I decided to try and find out a bit more about this. Were all these people being bitten that we were being told about? This child was attacked and that person was attacked. And actually, when I started researching it and looking into it, I discovered that the number of people being bitten by monkeys is so few that it's actually ridiculous to even say that monkeys are a danger to humans. But you needed to get that information across to people. And there's always the potential for a negative interaction. So there's ways that you can mitigate that situation and reduce the risk of that negative interaction happening. So we learned about all those things and we impart that knowledge to people.
Let's take a break and then let's come back and talk about how to minimize that interaction. I'd like to hear some more.
Perfect.
Thank you.
We have an exciting announcement to make. We are looking for guest speakers who are passionate about the pet industry and sponsors to support future episodes. Are you an expert in pet training, nutrition, or behavior? Maybe you're a veterinarian with insights to share, a pet store owner with unique experiences, or a pet product inventor. We want to hear from you. The Paws and Effect podcast is a platform for industry professionals like you to showcase your knowledge, experiences, and stories. As a guest speaker on our podcast, you'll have the opportunity to share valuable information, engage with our audience, and have your voice heard in the pet community. Whether you want to discuss training techniques, emerging pet care trends, or the importance of mental stimulation for pets, we want to feature you and your expertise. So, if you're passionate about pets and have something to say, we invite you to join us on an upcoming episode of the Paws and Effect podcast. But wait, that's not all. The Paws and Effect podcast is also seeking sponsors to support our mission of educating and entertaining pet lovers worldwide. By becoming a sponsor, you'll gain exposure to our engaged audience and have your brand associated with the love and care that we have for our four-legged friends. If you own a pet-related business, offer pet products or services, or simply want to align your brand with our pet-loving community, we'd love to partner with you. As a sponsor, your brand will be featured prominently in our episodes and our social media channels. It is a great opportunity to showcase your offerings to a dedicated audience of pet enthusiasts. So whether you're an expert in the pet industry looking to share your knowledge, or a business seeking to reach a pet-loving audience, we want to hear from you. To apply as a guest or to inquire about becoming a sponsor of the Paws and Effect podcast, please contact me at drkara@pawsandeffect.co.za. Get in touch and let's discuss the various opportunities. Thank you for joining us today. We can't wait to welcome our future guest speakers and sponsors to the Paws and Effect podcast. Remember, every episode is an opportunity to celebrate our four-legged friends.